Hello everyone. Welcome to the channel Gone But Not Forgotten. My first case that I want to explore is that of the Love family. When in August 11th of 1941, 5 children between the ages of 2 and 11 years old tragically died when they were trapped in their bedrooms during a fire that destroyed their 4-room house. The Loves lived in an old stone structure, a 150-year-old house that was once a highway toll house during the days when travelers paid for using highways. The Loves had acquired it 8 years before, and Mr. Love had remodeled it, including he built a wooden out kitchen in which the fire originated. The house stood directly across from the Blue Anchor Hotel, which is also known at different points as the Old Anchor Hotel or just the Anchor Hotel, on Doylestown Newtown Pike. This is now the intersection of routes 413 and 232 in Wrightstown. The hotel itself burnt down in the early hours of July 7th, 1998, and where it stands, or where the house stands, I'm not sure which, is currently a CVS pharmacy. The victims were Alice Ann Love, age 11, her sister Edith May, age 9, and her brothers James Ernest, who was 8, Dwayne, who was 4, and Paul Kay, who was 2. The children's parents were Ernest McCandless Love, and he was 45, and Pauline Love, who was 37 at the time. They managed to escape the fire along with another child, Hardy, who was age 6. Ernest was a Work Projects Administration road gang foreman, and Pauline raised the children. What happened was, the fire started in an out kitchen, that Mr. Love had built, when an oil stove that Mrs. Love was using to heat the water exploded in the kitchen. Pauline had given the children their Saturday night baths with water heated in this old-fashioned kerosene stove, and she was heating more water for her own bath. And she was sitting on the front porch, waiting for it. But the kerosene stove exploded, and flaming fuel quickly spread through the dry interior of the old stone dwelling. The first floor was quickly engulfed in flames, and Pauline was on the front porch, panic-stricken from the explosion outside the house. She ran through and climbed a narrow spiral staircase to wake up her husband and children, who were all sleeping on the second floor. Mr. Love, Ernest, who was sleeping upstairs with the children, grabbed 6-year-old Hardy and dashed down a narrow spiral stairway. He tossed the boy out of the kitchen door into a lane. Ernest groped again through the choking, blinding smoke to the stairway, but was driven back by the flames which roared up the wall from the stove. He said he heard his wife scream and the sound of breaking glass. Pauline had attempted to save the children, but was caught on the second floor. Blind and nearly suffocated by smoke, she smashed a window, dropped to a projecting ledge, and jumped to the ground. Suffering cuts from broken glass, she was taken to Doylestown Emergency Hospital. Employees and guests at the hotel across the street saw her crawl out onto the roof and jump. 5 fire companies responded to the alarm: Newtown, Wycombe, Midway, Richboro, and Willow Grove. However, they arrived too late, as the fire was already out of control. Pauline received 22 stitches in her arm. Ernest suffered cuts and bruises and burns on his arms and feet and received emergency treatment at the scene. He was grief-stricken, and he was driven from the flaming home and prevented from re-entering by firemen. Hardy, the 6-year-old, who had been thrown out the kitchen door, had only minor bruises. Ernest returned to the home the next day and declared, "I don't see why they didn't let me go back to get the other children. I'm sure I could have saved them." While he viewed the smoldering ruins, a small blaze broke out on a section of the roof still on the dwelling, and he was dissuaded from his attempts to gain entrance to the 2 rooms on the 2nd floor. The father, Ernest, and the son, Hardy, sought temporary refuge at a neighbor's home while plans for funeral services for the 5 deceased children were being made. The 5 children were buried in a single casket in Wrightstown Friends Meeting Cemetery. Their mother is buried there as well. Ernest was buried in Evergreen Cemetery, which is now the Rosedale Memorial Park in Bensalem, Pennsylvania. But life went on, and Ernest and Pauline stayed together and had another daughter. Unfortunately, in 1949, 8 years later, Ernest died at the age of 53. Pauline was preparing the children for school and found him in bed. He had had a heart attack. At that time, he was employed by Warner Steel in Bristol. Pauline died in 1990 at age 83. Hardy went on to get a degree in education from Penn State and became a teacher of industrial arts and other professions. He died at age 76 in 2011. I would ask you all to be very respectful in the comments, as this family has relatives and descendants. But that's the story of the 5 children who died in the fire in Wrightstown. I recently saw a similar story about the Sodder family, Sodder, in West Virginia, where 5 children died in the fire, and they became very famous as the parents didn't believe that the children, they had 10 children and 5 survived, and they didn't believe that the 5 children died in the fire but were kidnapped prior to that. So they became kind of famous. But this is a story that's similar, although everybody knew the children were in the house on this one, and it is still as tragic. Peace out.